Hi, welcome to this edition of County Happenings, where we find out what's happening all around the county when we talk to the County Mayor, Rogers Anderson.
Well,
How
good.
you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I spent a beautiful Wednesday in the creek with my grandsons, all three.
You know, you and I are easy to talk to because anytime someone brings up grandchildren,
We got plenty.
We got plenty to say, and all these people watching the show, they know that if they have grandchildren, they know what we're talking about. It's just that's one of the greatest joys that a man or woman can have, and if you're so blessed that you have that opportunity, what a wonderful, wonderful caveat as one is getting older and phasing out from this old world and earth.
They're just so invigorating and so fun.
Yeah, they are.
I had somebody say to me, "Well, they're making memories with Mimi," and I said, "Mimi's making memories."
Yeah, I've had the expression. My children don't like me to say it, that if I knew grandchildren were have this much enjoyment out of, I would have skipped children.
Yes.
And just went straight to
straight to grandkids.
You know, before I forget about it, we always talk about things that we try to list them on a piece of paper to get them covered in the short time we have here. But I don't know. Heather inside was saying this show's going to actually be taped shown after we tape it. And I hope we have the opportunity to stress the importance of, for those men and women on 11/11/11 o'clock, how important that will be. Veterans Day, 11 and 11. And I'm not real sure when the show will show, but if you're watching it and we have the opportunity and you've got the time, come on down to 5 Points on 11/11 and observe our men and women that have been in the military.
Yeah, meet some really fine young men and women, and older men and women.
Yes, and over the last year, because you covered the beat on a daily basis here in our community, we've lost a lot of our men and women that have served in the military, and particularly in the area of World War II. They are, there's not near as many of those men around, and now we're getting into the Korean era and then that era in the Vietnam. We've still got several years, but that's the baby boomers generation. But
they're getting into their 70s and 80s.
They are. Yeah, they really are. And I noticed in the paper this week, I don't think you wrote this particular article about we've got a gentleman in town that's 105.
Yes, yes.
And
Mr. Woolham?
Yes, Benny Woolham. And then what an inspiration to read the story. And I happen to know him like you do, and he is a character.
Yes, he is.
He is, but he's such a light-hearted, good, friendly. He comes by here from time to time. 105. And the article, whoever wrote
Susanna Marley.
Who's was raised here in our community.
Yes.
Suzanne. But the way she put it was the lady that he was
his girlfriend.
His girlfriend in her mid-80s. I won't say how old exactly. Said he was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And he robbed the cradle.
And he robbed the cradle. And he's 105. She's the mid-80s, and I thought, oh my. Now 20 years is a significant time difference if you're 40 and 20 or 30 and 10. But it seems that 85 and 100, or mid-80s and 105,
it's not that big a deal.
It's not that big a deal anymore, but I thought it was a sweet, sweet article. And he served
in World War II.
Before World War II.
Oh, that's right. He re-enlisted in World War II.
He re-enlisted before World War II, and he went back in doing radio communications. And what a wonderful track record and history he's got. And just to sit down and he was an orphan in his early days, and how he motivated himself to really become someone.
Yeah.
To, you know, we put so much emphasis on our children and raising them and being with them and certainly loving and kissing on them and our grandchildren. But here's a man that's been very successful, has a long life, and he basically did it on his own.
Right, he's banded at 13. That's right when kids really need that structure. He had to create it himself, and at a time. Oh, it is amazing. It's an
So I
amazing
wanted to
story.
mention
Yeah.
great to him and all the
Yeah.
other men and women that have served. So if you're have that opportunity to take
Yeah,
care
and
of
the
it on
parade
Veterans Day.
starts at noon. No, yes,
11.
11 o'clock. I'm sorry.
11,
11,
11.
11. Yes, the parade starts at 11, but the 5 Points is open. The archives is open at 9. Is that correct?
It'll be there.
Yeah.
They'll have the coffee, and hopefully we have some good weather.
Yes.
And
yes.
the men will be there driving their antique cars and showing
And ready to talk.
and
that
ready
they are.
to talk. That is for sure. What have you got to bring up today?
Well, there's been some talk about school funding, new schools, and some putting a halt or at least a hold on some of that funding. And that maybe you'd like to explain what's going on.
So let's kind of go back just for a few short months, and let's kind of draw that picture of where we are in Williamson County. Our county continues to grow and grow in record numbers, not just school-age children, but all people. And we have been told, we being the school board and the school administration, telling the county commission and our office that we can expect to have about 1,800 more children coming into our school system this year as opposed to what we had last year. Now, when you look across the state from Memphis and to Mountain Home and look at public education and the growth, and those figures are only available through last year, the growth of public education in public schools is really flat. You would think just the opposite. But a lot of that is because in some of your larger cities, public education now, its emphasis has gone to charter schools and to
Public or private schools?
private schools, because some school systems aren't having the successes that the school board and Dr. Looney and his team of people have put together to have good public schools. And the funding. The funding is a big part of that. Let's not forget that. But across the state, it's about flat. Not true for Middle Tennessee. Not true for Wilson, Rutherford, Davidson, Williamson. Here in the kind of the hub of all this growth that we're seeing, and specifically not to Williamson County because of all of the growth that we're seeing. So we're certainly getting our share. I came from an agricultural background. I came from a rural part of our state in the upper East Tennessee part. And part of that reason that there's not being those phenomenal types of growth is because there's not jobs there.
Right.
Now, we like to talk about that the quality of life, good clean air, good clean water, jobs, good roads, and public education. Those are what makes a family like yours and mine come and live. Now, you may want to live in more of the peripheral areas, get away from the Brentwoods and the Franklin city limits. You may want to go out more into the rural areas. That's your choice, but you've chosen to live in a county that's going to have good public education, where you're in the peripheral side or you're in a more city atmosphere. We opened 3 schools in the middle of August in Nolensville. We say 3 schools, and they really are. They're your elementary, your middle school, and your high school. And that was to help the growth pattern that was occurring at Ravenwood, Brentwood area, Sunset area, Page area, and even to some degree Centennial. But the majority of that was to help that fast-growing area in Nolensville. We already know, you and I have had this conversation over the last several years as we are getting older, you and me, a lot of us are downsizing. So those homes that are in those wonderful communities around Scales, around Walnut Grove, around the Grassland area.
More modest homes.
More modest homes. We don't need the houses that we had when we had children.
The rambling, big, huge.
Yes. And so more and more people are downsizing, and that's creating a backfill of younger people that are coming in and remodeling in those homes and bringing children. So now we're beginning to see communities in Brentwood and the Grassland area, and some in our Franklin, outside the Franklin Special School District, that are beginning to see that backfill of the next generation coming in. In fact, in the community I live in, a young couple just moved in and renovated a house, and the people that were living there had 4 children, and they stayed about a year after the 4th one left home, and they said, we're out of here.
Don't need all these rooms anymore.
Don't need to be dusted and cleaning and paying the utility bills for all of this big house. So they sold it. Here comes a young couple in, had their first child here recently. And so they're starting their life, and that child now will go and backfill, the word we're using. And so we're seeing this, such as Brentwood. Your question was suited to Brentwood. What are we going to do in the Brentwood community? The Brentwood Middle School, the Brentwood High School.
Yeah, and they're so landlocked you can't even add on to them.
That's right, they are. And they're at capacity.
Again,
yes. We've gone through 3 cycles. So Dr. Looney and the school board have been investigating what do they do? Where do they go? If they go somewhere, where are they going to go? Because all of us love our community schools.
yeah.
All of us love being associated with that community in which we live. It's usually your schools or your churches or your civic areas that form that community. And you're very quick to correct people that if you live in Grassland, that's not Franklin.
Right.
That's not Brentwood.
You know that.
I do know that. And we're very quick to say that I live in Rudderville or I live in the Page community.
I don't live in Fairview community. I live in Pinewood.
You live in Pinewood, that's right. And so we've kind of adopted this mindset that that's where my children are going to go to school. But when they get crowded, what do we do? If we can't add on to the physical structure that is already there, maybe the blueprint, the footprint of that school will not allow you to expand.
Right.
Chances are you can't go up. The structure.
You got because I've always thought, well, why not go up? But you've got the structure underneath that holds everything up. It wasn't built for a 3rd or 4th or 5th story.
That's right. That's the analogy that I use when I used to weigh 150 pounds and not 200 pounds. That structure down here is not holding up the structure that's up here. Now, I don't know that I can correct all that, but that's kind of the way you have to look at it. Anyway, so we are looking, where are we going to put another school in Brentwood?
Yeah, and things are filling up in Brentwood.
And there's not a lot of space.
No.
And the other component of that is very, very expensive.
You're right.
Very expensive. So the county commission authorized in the month of September, and gave the authorization to Dr. Looney by virtue of the resolution, okay, we will fund up to $15 million for some land purchases in the Brentwood area. And because the government has to negotiate with that landowner, they didn't tell us where it was at. I get that. I have to do that also. And you can negotiate much better if all the parties can do it like you would do, your husband, you and I would do at the house. But you can't do that in government.
Right, in government, you have to lay all your cards on the
That's
table,
right.
and that's hard to negotiate.
So one of the, and then Dr. Looney came out with the improvements for not only Brentwood, what he was proposing to do at the school site where, when they can find it, and they've identified 2 or 3 sites, but they haven't made an offer. And the same thing was going on at Franklin High School. The growth that is occurring in Franklin, they need more academic space. Then you've got the extracurricular activities in Brentwood and Franklin and all of our schools called sports and band and all the many, many things that our children are involved in. That require space and buildings.
High schools didn't used to have quite so much area, and now you have the school, but you have to have more land because of the sports, the outside experience.
That's right. It's the total complex at the new Nolensville was probably about 120 acres. That's a good sized
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah.
Now that's a high school and the athletic facilities and all the amenities, middle school, elementary school, the school at Summit. We bought about 125 acres. Now I'm going to be off a few acres, so don't hold my feet exactly to that. But out there, we did the same thing. You did it elementary, middle school, K-8 process, and then detached away from that was your high school. So the footprint they're trying to do these schools in, which you do get some cost equities when you can buy a whole tract of land as
Right.
of buying 25 or 50 acres, and you get some.
You're in your community. You're developing the community
You're
schools.
developing the community school. Plus, you can have some sharing of facilities so that you don't have
Right.
to have duplication of a lot of those things. Particularly in our elementary and middle schools, if we do a K-8, you can have the elementary on one side, the middle school on the other, and the central core of the school could be your lunchroom. It could be your administrative side of that. So at the last county commission meeting, there were some questions, and it all centered around dollars and cents. How much are we going to need? Dr. Looney has indicated over the next 12 to 15 years. This is 2016. We got 37,500 kids. By the year 2030, 14 years from now, we will have in the neighborhood of 50,000 children. That's about a 14,000. That's a third growth of your school system
Right.
in the next 12 to 15 years. If the economy holds up, the schools continue to maintain their excellent in academic standards, then I suspect that's going to happen. I suspect our cities and counties are going to expand their boundaries, their footprint, their annexation is occurring. People move there, they're going to have to be serviced by our public school system. Well, all of this kind of caught the county commissioners taking a deep breath. Most of us, and remember, and I know I'll say this for the viewing on it, you have three distinct parts of government. You have the executive branch, you have the legislative branch, and then you have the judicial branch. The judicial's kind of on the outside of funding, but anything you do over here, more people, more students, affects them. We also know that I don't have the power to just go out and build a school. That comes from the board of directors, which in this case is the county commission. So they took a deep breath, because when Dr. Looney said he's going to need approximately $500 million, $500 million over the next 10 years to do all of this program, well, that's
a lot of budget.
That's a lot of budget. In fact, that's our total indebtedness now.
Yeah,
and so
that's over all these years.
All these years. And so we've got a plan to pay that off. We do have a triple rating. We are investigating a lot of things to help pay for this. We've looked at the wheel tax. People said they didn't want that.
Right. Tax is really not an option.
It's not an option. So you've looked at the property taxes. We've had to raise that. That wasn't very much fun.
Yeah.
None of us like that. And now we're looking at educational impact fees, that when you move here, that the new residents would be paying more dollars to move into our community. We're seeing,
which is helpful, but on each home, that's only a one-time thing.
that is true.
And if something happens, a blip like it happened a few years ago, where new construction slows down, that goes away.
It goes away. So it's kind of like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, or it's kind of like looking at your home budget and my home budget. It's all of these pieces that make up what we do in our household or in our community or in our budgeting processes.
And what can we do differently
and how are we going to do that? How can we do that? And so they really took a deep breath. They said, we hear you, we know you need it, we know that we're going to have to fund it, but we're going to have to figure out a way that we can kind of ease into this. He's putting together, the school board and Dr. Looney, they're putting together this program of, if you came to us tomorrow and said you needed $500 million worth of new funding, I know what the vote would be.
Yeah, 24-0.
Pretty close. But phasing it in, what's going on? How can we trim $1 million off of here or 500,000 here?
What are you willing to give up to do this?
That's
too?
right.
I mean, in your house budget, I can't go and just say, okay, I need a big raise, Derby, and my husband's pension is not going to get a big raise. So we have to trim other places in order to do things.
You look at the growth patterns. Growth in itself, we all know this, does not pay for itself. It just doesn't do it. But it helps. But if that growth model slows down, you indicated, or stops, then that's even more concern, because what you have voted on to build, to fund, you have to pay for.
Right, you've already obligated yourself.
You're already obligated.
You already bought that car, now you got to pay for it.
You bought the car, you got to pay for it. Or you can turn it back in. Government can't turn it back in.
Right.
So it is good that these men and women, the school board and the county commissioners,
let's come up with a plan.
Let's come up with a plan. And if I lived in Brentwood or if I lived in Franklin, I wouldn't be totally scared of what are they doing. They should be more of, oh, I appreciate them doing that, because just as we started this show out talking about our grandchildren, your children do grow up, they leave home, but usually we fund a school 20 years.
Right.
That's more than the life than your child will be in that school. Even if we did the first one on the first grade, 12 years.
And they're out, and they've got 8 more years of payment on
And we
that.
still got 8 more years of payment,
Yeah.
plus the overall maintenance of that school, which is becoming increasingly acute to us because it costs money. You have to keep your property up.
Right, and with so many schools and so many older schools, that the older schools need more maintenance.
They certainly do. Now, we are paying off debt as we're putting on debt. I think it's important when we talk about these massive building programs, that's the bricks and mortar. That's the land.
Yeah, that's not the salaries and
That's
all
right.
the.
When you put the key in the door and you unlock it, and
You got to
open-
furnish that place.
You got to furnish that place. You got to put people in there to teach, and it's not just one teacher per 25 kids. You have teachers' aides. You have an administrator. We have an excellent special needs department in our county. We're known for that.
That's which brings more people.
But that in itself
It's
costs
very
money.
expensive.
That's not saying that we shouldn't do it. It is laying the facts out to where they are. So it's a good time for us to just take a little breath here and see. We'll know a lot of things. We're taping the show before the presidential election is completed. But we'll know a lot more that whoever is sitting at the top, how our economy is going to do for the next 4 years,
Right.
or 8 years, or 10 years. And you can't do it all alone at the local level. We get about 2% funding from the feds towards our budget of schools. We get about 47 to 48% funding from the state of Tennessee, which is really their job to educate children. If you
Right.
read the Constitution, it's their responsibility. But over a period of time, that shift has modeled itself down to the local level.
Which is, it may be their responsibility by the Constitution, but the more local it is, the better control there is.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't want to turn over our education system 100% back to the schools, because one size has to fit all, and that's not the way communities are developed.
Right.
That really, you're correct. But I'm just trying to make a point that 50% of that school budget is your taxes and my taxes. And that number goes up every year because the state's numbers are going down, the feds are going down, and so we're picking up more of that cost. Now you couple that with the growth, it's nothing you can't manage, but I want to know what I got to manage.
Right.
I want to know what it's going to cost. There are many people that will tell you on the campaign trail, politicians or non-politicians, well, I could fix that. There's a lot of components. And I'm
Well,
not
then
saying it's broke.
give me your plan.
It's, it's not broke,
Right.
but it does cost money. And the answer of saying I'm not going to fund it, that is an option. That is an option. But I don't know that the people in this community are
I'm
ready
ready
for
for
that.
$500 million right now.
Yeah, that's right. So you got a couple other things. I know our time's running out.
Yeah, but I think a couple of these things we're going to have to hold off till next time. But one, we were talking about funding. There's some upcoming changes here at WCTV
We
that we're looking at.
our director that's been here for as long as I have, Newt Danley's getting ready to hang up his cleats, and this is October. We'll do this show in November and again in December. But at the end of this year, Newt Danley, who's really the overseer of all these programs we do out in the community, our sports program. He's hanging up his cleats after
His big boots, and somebody's going to have to fill them big
somebody's
boots.
going to have to fill those boots, and probably from now on, I will say for the next 3 times that we're around, I owe a great deal to Newt for the development of the many programs that we have here in Williamson County. Long before we had the studio, he was involved. He came from Channel 4.
He was over at Fairview where I was working, where I was actually working with the kids on the TV show.
So from the very essence of this small studio, we're getting ready to revamp another part of this building and kind of expand it. He'll never see
He worked really hard
to
for
get
that
it,
too,
yeah.
and he's not going to see
He'll
it.
have to come back as a visitor.
Yeah,
We can interview
he'll
him.
be, yeah, he'll be our first interview.
We want to say thank you to him. We wish him and his wife, she was here the other day, a wonderful retirement. Now, I'm not sure that he's not lost his mind. He's moving north when
I
he
know.
retires.
Who does that? Except if you have children.
That's right. We're back to those children things again. So he's done a great job. He's trained so many young men and women have come through here, and his boots will be hard to fill,
They
but
sure
life
will.
does go on, and
Yeah.
so thank you, Newt, for what you've done.
Yeah, and thank you. I think it's not enough. Real quick, the Enrichment Center is it'll be
OBGA
open-
campus
Yep.
on Columbia Avenue. We talked about it at great length this morning with Gordon Hampton, our Parks and Recreation Director, but just to touch on it, Enrichment Center for our seniors, afternoon for our youth, and the many activities that are going on there. Our community theater, our Shakespeare in the park,
Yeah.
our gymnasium setting next door to the public library. It looks like we will be able to open that in and around March 1st. They're on schedule, but there's some little things, and we're getting ready to get into the cold part of the season.
Right.
So we got to wrap up the work outside, work on the inside. I'm so excited about bringing that online and having a place, an award-winning place, a place of culture with the fine arts and all that for our community, and it certainly won't take away from down there. We got to go.
Yeah. And so that's a wrap up. See you next time on County Happenings, where you find out what's happening.